Welcome to the Observe Day podcast, the show where we celebrate the days that matter. From holidays to meaningful observances, we bring you inspiring conversations, stories, and ideas to make each day count. Whether it's raising awareness, learning something new, or simply sparking joy, this is your space to explore the calendar in a whole new way. I'm your host, Wisdom Okonkwo, and I'm excited to share today's observance with you. Let's dive in. Today on the Observe Day podcast, we're celebrating Classical Music Month with a guest who lives at the intersection of music, writing, and resilience. Andrew Cloninger is a multidisciplinary artist, musician, and producer with the band Ren Cove. He's also the author of Six to 67, a powerful book of haiku that chronicles his journey through disability, recovery, and rediscovering identity. From coffee house stages and jazz bands to recording his own bedroom pop albums, Andrew's creative path has always been intertwined with music and storytelling. Despite setback, he has returned to the stage stronger with new perspectives on creativity, faith, and wellness. Today we'll dive into his journey, the timeless influence of classical music, and how the art form continues to inspire musicians and writers alike. Welcome to the podcast, Andrew.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so awesome to have to be here. Thanks, Wisdom.
Yeah, your story blends music and writing beautifully. For Classical Music Month, what does classical music mean to you personally?
Well, it means a lot to me because it was actually the first type of music that I heard of outside of the church. That there was a different type of possibilities as far as music goes. I grew up in a very fundamentalist church, very strict with what kind of music that we were able to listen to, and so classical music was great because it was instrumental, and so I could listen to all types of different strains of it, and different, from the classics like Beethoven or Mozart or Handel or all these different ones of Wagner, to even some more contemporary people, mid-century stuff. And so it's been a very fundamental and very close to my heart. And also, my sister is a
Okay.
classically trained pianist.
Wow.
So yeah, so it goes pretty deep.
Yeah, obviously. You've created across genres, you've done bedroom pop to jazz to poetry.
Hmm.
And for me, how has classical music shaped your creative process? Does it in that equation?
Yeah, it does, because when I was younger, I took piano lessons, and when I was a kid, and growing up with it, it helps you with the structure of music. It helps you, and I'm in a band with a cellist, and so there's a lot of classical leanings in our music, and so to be helpful in the studio when we're creating music, it's very helpful to know the ins and outs of the different of different modes and different structures and different ways that we can build the tracks,
Yeah.
through string arrangement, for sure.
When I hear classical music, right, what I think of is, most of these thinkers, mentors, and all those people across history, one time and the other, they would listen to classical music and just, spend some time with their thought and just think and gaze into the stars and stuff like that. And so when I think of classical music, I think of, oh, yeah, people listen to classical music to think and to just reflect. And
Sure.
as someone who's in the music world, do you listen to classical music like, to just
Yeah.
focus and stuff like that?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I'm one of those people that I think it's very important to listen to all kinds of music. You
Okay.
know, but I believe that classical music has a important place. And like you were talking about, meditation, contemplation, those are things that definitely come to mind when I'm, like when I'm trying to, sometimes when you have a long day, or long day in the studio or something like that, it's actually nice to listen to classical music to like come down from like a stressful day, you
Yeah.
know, and be able to reflect on what your day was like. Another aspect of classical music for me is is healing.
Hmm.
Because for me, I had some neck injuries and things like that really prevented me from making music, and I wasn't able to get around very well, walking around and stuff, so I was in bed a lot and that kind of thing, and so I listened to a lot of classical music to help center myself and to be able to rest. And I believe that it was, I believe that music really helped me in my journey to recovery and from some of the physical ailments that I have. And it would really help me center myself and focus on what I needed to focus on to get better. And I really, I believe that, there's
Before we dive deeper, I'd love to invite you to join the Observe Day newsletter. Every week, I send you highlights of upcoming observances, creative ways to celebrate, and behind the scenes extras from the shows. It's the perfect way to stay inspired and never miss a meaningful moment. Sign up today at observeday.com/join. That is observeday.com/join. Now, let's get back to the conversation.
in all music there's that component, but I also believe that for me the classical music was definitely part of that journey.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because one of the questions I was about to ask you is how did the music play a role in the healing after the C6?
Yeah, I mean it was it was a big time, because I was in a lot of pain. The type of one composer that I was listening to a lot was Avro Part. He's an Estonian composer, and he's still alive actually. And his music is based on Gregorian chants, but it's very, it's done in with, like with a piano and violin and
Yeah,
cellos and stuff like that. But it's so spaced out, and it's so, it's based on that type of Gregorian chants, so that it's in this different key and very, mysterious and beautiful, and that really helped me in the healing process for sure.
one of the things you mentioned in your profile is you struggled with your identity as an artist when playing guitar became difficult.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so from
Yeah, for sure. Because it's like breathing for me. It's like that's the thing that defined me for over 20 years. He's a musician. He plays music. And when you can't play the instrument, and especially when you can't play it well, because what happened was I had a bulging disc in my neck, and then it
yeah,
pinched the nerve in my arm, in my left arm, so I wasn't able I didn't have the grip strength to hold down the strings, and so it became a big, it was a big struggle. Like, who am I if I can't do this
yeah,
that I've been doing forever? And so that was one of the crossroads of like, you know, asking yourself that question, but also going through that, going beyond just the question, but trying to answer it was the thing that, what is more important, that I have this thing that, some people say is, that I'm really good at, or is it more important to be a better human? You
yeah,
know, those are the things that I really had to really focus on. I want to be a better husband. I want to be a better person. I want to be a better dad. Those were things that I had to really focus on. I had to focus on my health to get myself back to be
yeah,
able to do those things. And so that was important to me, was
yeah.
going beyond the music. And I believe that the music helped me, but I also believe that my faith and also being able to face the hard questions, was really part of my recovery for sure.
Now, you've spoken about faith being a part of your journey. And so for me, I'm curious, how, what was the journey like, doing those tough times? And I know, I'm curious, what role did music play regarding, helping to like, this journey of faith towards those, period?
Well, especially, the way that some of the music that I was so I really, because I like to listen to a lot of different types of music, sometimes I have a tendency to go through like, different modes. So, like sometimes I'll be just listening to rock music for a while,
Yeah,
or sometimes I'll listen to jazz music for a while, or whatever it is. And it, for whatever reason during that period, I pretty much primarily listened to classical music the whole time. And it was like a 2-year period. And so I mean, I would mix it in here and there, like different types of music. But what really, it was almost like a soothing thing. It was almost like a cathartic release because of all the frustration and the anger that I had from being, becoming disabled and not being able to do the things that I normally would do, like provide for my family and basically being on, bed rest and not being able to really do, pick up my son and hold him and play with him and that type of thing. And, it was like one of my, like love languages with my son was touch and
Yeah.
and holding him and playing with him and stuff like that. And I wasn't allowed to lift him anymore, because of the injury. And I couldn't, for a while there, I couldn't even, before I went through like physical therapy and OT and stuff like that, occupational therapy as well. You know, I still can't, I mean, now he's a lot bigger now. So, he's 13. So there's no way I'm picking him now. But, he was a lot younger at the time. And so, he was a lot lighter, but still, even then I wasn't able to do that. So I had to come up with different ways, be creative in that sense of showing that I cared and that I'm a part of the family and contributing. And that was a really big eye opener. But I think the music really helped with the therapy of my mind. It kept my mind focused on the task at hand. It kept me from feeling crazy, because I think a lot of times, at least with me, you have you're your own worst critic. And I think sometimes you had those negative voices in your head. And I felt like the music that I was listening to, I purposely chose music that was peaceful, that was meditative, because I
Yeah.
didn't want the negativity in my life, because I knew I already had it. I already had it. It was already there. So I had to figure out a way to try to mitigate the negative thoughts and the negative mind loop, so to speak. And
Yeah.
I really feel like the music had a big part in helping me with that, with the mental aspect of it, for
Thank you
sure.
for sharing that, Andrew.
Oh,
Yeah, many say classical music is timeless, because it transcends the trends.
mhm.
Do you still think it still shapes how modern musicians, including yourself, create today?
Well, for sure. I mean, there's some like very amazing contemporary classical composers right now that are, they're creating these hybrid pieces with, they're using electronics, they're using, different kinds of beats. They're using, the piano, the violin orchestras, and it's just unbelievable. Like, there's a German composer, Max Richter, and there's also some Icelandic composers. And there was one pianist that was coming to mind, Hannah Rainey. She's a
Yeah,
Polish classical pianist, but I mean, she incorporates all kinds of different kinds of music inside the classical. Overall, it's a classical situation, but she's kind of incorporating. There's a little bit of jazz in there. There's a little bit of, like rock and roll, a little bit, and like electronic music. And,
yeah,
she, like, when I was a kid, my parents, they would take me to, the local, orchestra concert. And it would be very, very stiff, very like, wear your best polo shirt, you know,
yeah,
and and it was like, make sure it's clean, but it's like, but the thing is that they were playing all the classics, like, all the, like the Beethovens and all those kind of
yeah,
people, Mozart's, all those, which are great. But it didn't really speak to me, because it
yeah,
it wasn't stuff. It wasn't something that I could hold in my hand, whereas some of this other newer stuff that's coming out right now, these guys are coming out of conservatory, and they're like, well, what else can I pull from? What are the things that I like? I think hip hop has a big influence on some of these guys, and like using samplers and sound effects. Like, I was listening to this
yeah,
one not too long ago that they had rain samples in it. and like different, like, footsteps, and then sometimes they would have singers, but the singers aren't singing any words, they're actually singing melodies, and
Yeah,
that's awesome. That's, I'm all for it. So yeah, I think it's in a great place, and I think that I think it's even more appealing, at least to me, than it was even in the past.
yeah. Wow. Thank you so much for breaking that down.
Oh, no problem.
Why you were explaining that, you did explain a lot of you did give a lot of examples of some of the contemporary classical artists. But I'm curious if you could recommend one classical piece every listener should hear at least once in their life. What would it be and why?
So that's a good one, because I was just thinking about, I mentioned Avro Part, and one of his pieces that really spoke to me when I was kind of down and out was, it's called Furalina, and it's this beautiful piece that is just piano and violin, and it is breathtaking. And if you could ever just sit there and just listen, like in a quiet space, and just listen to it,
Yeah,
it'll transform you and bring you to a beautiful meditative state that you'll find peace for sure. I
yeah.
I would highly recommend that one for sure.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you so much for discussing classical music with me and also
Oh,
for sharing your recommendation.
for
Uh,
sure.
you know, you've written the book 7, which highlights your story going through that injury. Where
Mhm.
can listeners get the book, and also where can we connect with you?
So you can check out, the book is on Amazon. You can Google C6C7 by Andrew Cloninger, and it's widely available there. And also, it's my publisher is Atmosphere Press. It's also available through them. The best way to connect with the music and everything is rencovemusic.com, and we're releasing an album in October, which is really exciting. It's
Yeah,
called Movement. It'll be on Spotify, all the normal streaming platforms. It'll
yeah,
be there. So, check it out. It's an instrumental, 11 songs, instrumental. We, like, again, we add all the different, classical, jazz, folk, rock. It's all in there. So, I'm really excited to release that in the world. And so that's coming out October 14th. So we're really excited about that. So it took us 2 years to make. So we're really stoked to share it with everybody. So that's
wow,
good.
thank you so much. I'm looking forward to the music release. I will add the relevant links in the description and the show notes so listeners can click and go directly to the site, and of course also check out the book. Thank you so much, Andrew, for chatting with me.
Thank you so much, Wisdom, for having me. This is really exciting. Thank you.
That's it for today's episode of the Observe Day podcast. Thank you for spending your time with us as we explore today's observance. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and share it with a friend who'd love to celebrate life special days too. Don't forget to join the newsletter at observeday.com/join for more observance stories, tips, and updates. Until next time, keep finding meaning in every day.